Andrew Larry Montgomery. He was born with a silver spoon in his mouth. A life of privilege and excess. He never wanted anything. His family's fortune was vast. Andrew stood at the pinnacle of luxury and privilege. He was surrounded by the opulence of his family's sprawling mansion on the Upper East Side of Manhattan. Born into a life of excess, Andrew's father, Mark Armstrong, had built a global chain of five-star hotels, making the Armstrong name a household name in the world of hospitality. Their empire, built on luxury hotels, spanned from the US to Europe. The Armstrong name opened every door. Andrew, the sole heir, was doted upon. His parents showered him with material possessions. Andrew grew up in a Manhattan mansion, a world unto itself. Every whim of his was catered to. His every desire was fulfilled. Yet something was missing. A void gnawed at him. He longed for something more. Mark Armstrong, Andrew's father, was a formidable figure. A captain of industry, he ruled his business with an iron fist. His wife, Jennifer, the matriarch, was elegance personified. She moved through their world with grace and poise. Mark and Jennifer were a power couple, their names whispered in hushed tones. Their marriage, however, was a different story. It was a union of convenience. It lacked warmth and affection. Andrew grew up witnessing their cold interactions. Their love, if it ever existed, had long since faded. It left an indelible mark on Andrew. He became emotionally distant, unable to form genuine connections. His parents' wealth couldn't buy them happiness, and Andrew, despite his privilege, felt a profound sense of emptiness. He sought solace in fleeting pleasures. His life is a series of parties and meaningless encounters. He became a man of contradictions. Outwardly charming and confident, yet inwardly insecure and afraid to love. Trapped in a cycle of wealth and emptiness, longing for something more. Life took an unexpected turn when Andrew was 26. His father, Mark Armstrong, died suddenly. A heart attack, they said. It was a blow that shook Andrew despite their strained relationship. The weight of the Armstrong legacy now fell upon his young shoulders. His mother, Jennifer, now at the helm of the empire, watched Andrew closely. She saw his recklessness, his lack of direction. Jennifer, a woman of steel, had her plans. The Armstrong hotels were her life's work. She worried about Andrew. She wouldn't see the empire crumble under Andrew's careless watch. One evening, when Andrew was 32 years old, his mother summoned him to her study. It was a room of dark wood and leather, a place of power and decisions. The air was thick with unspoken tension. Jennifer Armstrong sat in her plush study, the weight of the Armstrong empire resting heavily on her shoulders. Andrew sat opposite her, his expression a mix of curiosity and irritation. "Andrew," Jennifer began, her voice firm yet laced with concern, "I've called you here for a reason. It's time we talked about the future." "What now, Mum?" Andrew asked as he shifted uncomfortably in his seat. His eyes widened in surprise. Was this it? Was he finally being handed the reins? A surge of excitement, quickly tempered by uncertainty, washed over him. "I'm stepping down as CEO of Armstrong Hotels. It's time for you to take over," Jennifer said. Andrew was surprised. "Really?" he said. Jennifer's next words are hanging in the air like a guillotine. "Yes, but there are conditions to my abdication. I've watched you and your relationships over the years. To inherit what your father and I have worked hard for, you must remain single. I can't risk our legacy being divided in a divorce. I will not allow another woman to become an instant millionaire from my 40 years of toiling and sweating when they marry you and divorce you within a year or two." "Conditions for me to inherit?" "Conditions?" Andrew echoed, his brow furrowing. He'd never heard his mother speak like this before. What would make her say something like this? "Yes," Jennifer repeated, her tone steely. "You will not marry. It's for your good, Andrew, and for the future of our legacy." She knew her son was arrogant and blinded by his privilege. He'd never shown interest in the business in the past, no matter how hard Jennifer and Mark had tried to encourage him. Andrew's face turned from surprise to anger as he argued for a prenup, but Jennifer stood firm. No marriage. Was it a price he was willing to pay? Andrew knew his mother well enough to understand that the argument would not get him anywhere if he continued. Reluctantly, Andrew agreed and signed the agreement. Jennifer arranged for the family attorneys to incorporate the signed agreement into the family business meeting documents. Andrew's relationship with his mother grew more strained after that fateful evening. A few months later, Andrew, lost in his thoughts, wandered into a bustling downtown cafe seeking a brief escape from his gilded cage. The warmth and the aroma of coffee drew him in. He needed a distraction, a moment of peace. As he stepped inside, there behind the counter was Angela Polk, a young woman whose radiant smile lit up the room. His eyes fell on her. Her presence seemed to cast a spell over him, drawing him in like a moth to a flame. With each step closer, he felt his heart quicken with anticipation, his senses heightened by the intoxicating scent of freshly brewed coffee and the soft hum of conversation all around him. When he finally reached the counter, Andrew found himself momentarily speechless, captivated by the sight of Angela standing before him. She greeted him with a warm smile, her eyes sparkling with genuine kindness and hospitality. She was radiant, her smile a beacon of light in the dimly lit cafe, her every movement graceful and elegant. "Good morning," she said, her voice as sweet as honey and just as inviting. "What can I get for you today?" For a moment, Andrew struggled to find his voice, his mind consumed by the sheer magnetism of Angela's presence. But as their eyes met, he felt a surge of courage welling up inside him, emboldening him to speak. His eyes never leaving her, he wondered, who was this woman? And why did her presence stir something so deep within him? "I'll have a cappuccino, please," he replied, his voice betraying a hint of nervousness that he couldn't quite shake. Angela nodded, her smile never faltering as she set about preparing his order with practiced ease. As she worked, Andrew found himself studying her every movement, marveling at the effortless grace with which she moved, and the way her silky hair caught the light in a cascade of golden hues. When she finally handed him his drink, their fingers brushed against each other for the briefest of moments, sending a shiver down Andrew's spine. He took a sip of his cappuccino, savoring the rich, velvety flavor as he savored the lingering warmth of her touch. "Thank you," he said, meeting Angela's gaze with a newfound sense of appreciation. "This is perfect." Her smile widened, her eyes crinkling at the corners as she returned his gaze with a warmth that felt like coming home. "You're welcome," she replied, her voice soft and melodic. "Enjoy your drink." And with that, Andrew turned to leave. His mind was buzzing with the memory of their brief interaction. As he stepped out into the bustling city streets, he couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement building within him, a feeling that this chance encounter with Angela was only the beginning of something truly extraordinary. Andrew found himself drawn to her warmth and genuine kindness, a stark contrast to the superficial women he had known in the past. For the first time in his life, he felt a flicker of something he couldn't quite place. He later learned her name was Angela. She worked at the cafe to support her family, her dreams put on hold. She was studying to be a nurse, her heart filled with compassion and a desire to help others. After their initial encounter at the cafe, Andrew found himself unable to get Angela out of his mind. Her radiant smile, her captivating blue eyes, and the warmth of her presence lingered with him long after he had left the cafe that day. He knew he had to see her again to explore the connection that had sparked between them in those fleeting moments. Determined to seize the opportunity, Andrew made it a point to visit the cafe more frequently, each time hoping to catch another glimpse of Angela. And sure enough, fate seemed to be on his side as their paths crossed again and again in the bustling cafe. One day, Andrew decided to strike up a conversation with Angela, eager to learn more about the woman who had captured his heart. He asked for her number before he left, and he called her later that night. That first night, they talked for hours, exchanging stories and sharing laughs as they discovered a shared love of art, music, and literature. As their friendship blossomed into something more, Andrew found himself falling deeper and deeper under Angela's spell. He was drawn to her kindness, her intelligence, and her unwavering optimism in the face of life's challenges. With each passing day, he found himself more certain that Angela was the one he had been searching for, a soulmate destined to be by his side through thick and thin. Their romance unfolded like a whirlwind, with romantic dinners, long walks in the park, and stolen moments of passion that left them breathless with desire. Their courtship was swift and intense, filled with Andrew's extravagant gifts and whispered declarations of love. He seemed to worship the ground Angela walked on. He showered her with affection and attention at every turn, determined to make her feel cherished and adored in every possible way. And as their love grew stronger with each passing day, Andrew knew that he had found something truly special in Angela, a love that transcended time and space, a connection that defied logic and reason. In her arms, he found solace and sanctuary, a refuge from the chaos of the world outside. Their romance was a beacon of light in a sea of darkness, a testament to the power of love to conquer even the greatest obstacles. As they embarked on this new chapter of their lives together, Andrew knew that he would stop at nothing to protect and cherish the woman who had stolen his heart so completely. Weeks turned into months. Andrew, consumed by Angela's love, forgot about his mother's ultimatum. He'd found something precious, something real. He took her to art galleries, to the opera, to candlelit dinners overlooking the city. He showered her with gifts, but it was the look in his eyes, the tenderness in his touch that truly moved her. One rainy afternoon, as they sought shelter under a park pavilion, Andrew, his heart pounding in his chest, got down on one knee. "Angela," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion, "you are the love of my life. I cannot imagine a life without you. You've made me a happy man since I met you. Will you marry me?" Excitedly, Angela answered, Yes, of course, I'll marry you, Andrew. I'd love to be your wife." The wedding was set for a crisp autumn day. The grand cathedral was filled with guests eagerly awaiting the union of Andrew and Angela. Flowers, caterers, musicians, no expense was spared. The church was full. Everywhere was buzzing with music. Andrew could hear the murmur of voices, the soft strains of music drifting from the ballroom. As he stood at the altar waiting for the arrival of his beautiful bride, nerves and excitement coursing through him, a sudden realization struck him like a lightning bolt. The agreement with his mother. "Oh my God," he gasped. His mother's words echoed repeatedly in his ears. The weight of his inheritance, of his family's legacy, pressed down on him with suffocating force, a constant reminder of the price he had to pay for it all. His heart pounded in his chest, a frantic drum against his ribs. The music stopped. A hush fell over the crowd. It was the cue. Angela was about to make her entrance. Panic surged through Andrew, a tidal wave of fear and guilt. He had to get out. He couldn't go through with this wedding. He was a man torn, a man about to lose all his wealth or shatter the heart of the only woman he'd ever loved. He had to make a choice, and he had to make it now. Panic gripped him, and in a moment of desperation, he fled. He quietly snuck out through the nearest exit right before Angela walked in. He didn't look back. He ran as if the hounds of hell were at his heels, past the startled guests, out into the cool autumn air. As Angela walked down the aisle, her heart was filled with joy and anticipation. She excitedly looked ahead, hoping to catch a glimpse of her soon-to-be husband. He was not standing where she thought he would be. She walked confidently on, approaching the officiating minister with grace and confidence. As she stood in front of the congregation, all eyes were on her, and the minister looked on in wonder. "Where is the groom?" he whispered. "Is he not here?" Angela whispered back. There were gasps and whispers as the guests realized that Andrew was not standing next to Angela. In a cruel twist of fate, Angela's fairy tale wedding turned into a nightmare. Andrew was nowhere to be found. He had vanished without a trace before they could take their vows. The sounds of the city washed over Andrew as he ran. He craved traffic, sirens, and the distant rumble of the subway, anything to drown out the echoes of his cowardice. He spent the night in a hotel. Sleep was impossible. Guilt gnawed at him, a constant reminder of his betrayal. He had to explain himself to Angela. He couldn't let her believe he'd simply abandoned her, left her standing at the altar without a word. He sat down and began to write. He poured out his heart onto the page, confessing everything: the inheritance, his mother's ultimatum, his fear of losing Angela. He wrote of his love for her, a love so profound that it terrified him. He wrote of his hope that one day she might find it in her heart to forgive him. The letter was sent, and a small measure of relief washed over him. But it was a fleeting sensation. He knew he had a long road ahead, a path paved with regret and uncertainty. He couldn't stay in New York, not now, not with the whispers, the judging eyes, the constant reminder of what he'd done. He packed a bag and decided to leave town for a while, at least until the storm and chaos he caused had subsided. Overwhelmed and full of misery, Andrew boarded a flight, heading west towards the setting sun, towards the unknown, with a faint hope of redemption. The wedding day dawned bright and beautiful, a cruel mockery of the storm raging within Angela. The guests had long since departed, their whispers and confused murmurs fading into the silence of the penthouse Andrew had bought for her. Andrew's note lay crumpled in her hand, the ink blurred by her tears mixed with Andrew's. Each word was a shard of glass, piercing her heart, shredding the dreams they had woven together. Shame washed over her, a bitter tide. How could she have been so wrong about him, so blind to the truth that lay beneath his charming facade? She fled the penthouse, seeking refuge in the anonymity of the city streets. Heartbroken and humiliated, Angela resigned from the cafe where she had met Andrew and returned home, seeking solace in her family. Life, as it always does, went on. Angela, her heart still heavy with Andrew's betrayal, tried to pick up the pieces of her shattered dreams. She returned to her childhood home, a small but loving space filled with memories of simpler times. It was a far cry from the glittering world Andrew had introduced her to, but it filled her days with purpose and a quiet sense of fulfillment. She found solace in caring for others, taking a job as a home health aide while she waited to start nursing school. One day she was given an assignment by the staffing agency she worked for. The job was for a wealthy woman in upscale Manhattan. Angela's new job brought her to the luxurious home of Jennifer Armstrong, although she had no idea who Mrs. Armstrong was. Andrew had never introduced them. As the days turned into weeks, Angela developed a strange understanding with her elderly wealthy boss, who treated her like a daughter. Jennifer was very pleased with Angela, and neither knew of the connection they shared through Andrew. Ten months into the job, Jennifer mentioned to Angela that her estranged son would be visiting. One evening, as Angela was reading to Jennifer, a familiar figure appeared in the doorway. Andrew. His face was etched with fatigue, his eyes filled with a mixture of hope and trepidation. Both Andrew and Angela froze in shock when they saw each other for the first time in almost 2 years. The silence hung heavy in the air, broken only by Angela's rapid breaths. Angela's heart pounded in her chest, a chaotic rhythm against her ribs. The realization of the pain he had caused Angela hit Andrew like a ton of bricks. Angela looked at Jennifer in shock and wanted to run out of the room. Andrew ran to her, held her in his arms, then falling to his knees, cried, "Angela, I'm so sorry. I never meant to hurt you." Angela, with tears streaming down her face, cried, "Why, Andrew? Why did you do that to me?" Jennifer, suddenly realizing the connection, begins to cry, "This is the angel who's been taking care of me?" "Andrew, do you know this angel who's been taking care of me?" Andrew told his mother everything, sobbing. His words tumbled over each other, a torrent of regret and longing for his long-lost love. Jennifer, shocked, responded with a lot of regret. She had pushed her son and molded him into the image of success she had envisioned. In doing so, she had robbed him of the chance to experience true love, the kind of love that Angela had offered him. Andrew begged Angela for forgiveness. He spoke of his travels, his search for solace, and his realization that true wealth lay not in money and power, but in the love he had so carelessly thrown away. Jennifer, trembling slightly, reached out and took both Andrew and Angela's hands in hers. "My dear children," she whispered, "I am so very sorry. Andrew, this young woman has been taking good care of me. She has been very generous in her kindness. Now, I let her manage my other staff. She is like the daughter I never had. I told her that a few days ago. Life is too short. Please don't let pride and past mistakes steal your happiness. This is the perfect woman for you, Andrew. I give you my full blessing to marry her if she forgives you." Jennifer held Angela in her hands and asked her especially for forgiveness. And in that moment, something shifted. The years of pain and resentment began to melt away, replaced by a glimmer of understanding, of forgiveness. Angela looked into Andrew's eyes, truly looked at him, and saw the man she had fallen in love with, stripped bare of his arrogance and fear. Jennifer begged for forgiveness from both Andrew and Angela, admitting her role in their heartbreak. She immediately called the lawyers to destroy the agreement and gave her blessing for their marriage. Angela, touched by Jennifer's sincerity and Andrew's remorse, agreed to give their love another chance. In a beautiful garden, Andrew and Angela finally exchanged vows, surrounded by family and friends. Their love had overcome immense obstacles, and as they walked down the aisle hand in hand, they knew they were destined to be together. Their story was a testament to the power of love and forgiveness, a beacon of hope in a world filled with challenges. They lived happily ever after, their hearts forever entwined, just two hearts bound together by a love that had weathered the storm and emerged stronger than ever.